Good morning, good afternoon, good evening everyone, wherever you are in the world. I am Lothari, and today I have a slightly different video, if you know my content, but we'll give it a whirl. For those of you who don't know me, I am a content creator for Team Aretusa. Team Aretusa is a professional esports team for Dota Underlords and for Gwent, and I think it's safe to say we made our mark on the gaming world in Gwent. That's our origin, and that's the game we're talking about today. I have been very privileged to be playing the iOS version of Gwent over the last week or so, the last 6 days, in a media pre-release version, because the game is coming out on iOS tomorrow as I'm recording this. And now that the media embargo has been dropped, I am free to give my view, and that's something that I would like to share with you today. Now, this video will be cut roughly into 2 sections. There'll be a section first for people who already know Gwent, and I can talk a little bit about just the mobile experience of it on its own. And then there will be a part of the video for people who have never seen Gwent before, never heard of Gwent, where I can talk a little bit more about how the game works mechanically speaking. I don't want it to be too long, so let's just jump straight into it. So first of all, for people who already know their way around Gwent, who just want to know a bit more about should I get the iOS version or not, obviously the first question is, do you have an Apple device? It will only work with iPhone 6s, I think, or newer. Any iPad Pro. I'm hoping that CD Projekt Red will release the specs somewhere, because I don't know them off the top of my tongue. But off the top of my head, rather. If you have a reasonably new iDevice, then the game will work for you. The question then becomes, how does it play? And I will be very honest. I am incredibly surprised with how polished this game was when the closed PTR happened however many weeks ago that was now. Time has been moving at such a blur that I have completely lost track of time. It basically plays exactly the same way as it does on the computer or the consoles, I imagine. I've never actually played Gwent on consoles before. But that's what you want. You don't want to have a different experience on different platforms, particularly if you have it on more than one platform. You want to be able to sit down at your PC, play a couple of games of Gwent, realise you've got to go somewhere, and then pick it up straight on your phone and have exactly the same experience. And from that regard, it is identical in terms of how the game is structured and all of the UI and everything. It's the same game. It would be very odd if it wasn't, truthfully. It's very slick. It plays it at exactly the same pace and exactly the same speed as the PC version. We understand at the moment that the developers are looking into trying to speed some parts of the game up a little bit more after decoupling logic from aesthetics, and I imagine that will be something that will be ported to PC and mobile and consoles if it's affecting consoles as well at the same time. It's very comfortable to use. My big fingers had a little bit of difficulty pulling the card I wanted to pull onto the board, but that was my fault more than the game's. I'm playing on an iPhone 7, which is, I'll get onto it in a minute, but one of my worries was that the screen was just going to be too small for all of the Gwent board, but 9 times out of 10 I was able to get the card that I wanted, put it onto the board, didn't have any problems. And all of the information that I have seen a couple of complaints about on the PC version, having the logic stack at the side, things like that, all of it makes a lot more sense on mobile, and it feels like it belongs. When the trailers dropped for Gwent on iOS or Gwent on mobile, it said something along the lines of the Gwent as it's meant to be played or something like that, but it really does feel that way. It feels like it's at home on a mobile phone. I'll try it out on a tablet as well tomorrow or over the weekend, maybe. Yeah, I'm generally very, very impressed with how it works. As I said, one of the biggest fears I had was that on mobile phones, the tablets not so much, but on phones themselves, small phones like this, you weren't going to have enough space to show all of the different information that you have to show during a Gwent game. There is quite a lot of information. All of this works on the mobile version as well. Let's just jump into the training game so that people who haven't seen it before can see what I'm talking about. All of the scores, all of the cards, the faction information, the ability information, all of this. Oh, this is the first time I'm seeing this. It's very cool. Get rid of this. See, I'm so used to playing it on mobile that I wanted to click and drag that card, but that's not how it works. So there's quite a lot of information on this screen. As you can see, you've not just got the hands and the graveyard and the deck, you've got the number of cards, you have the faction ability, you have the panel where you can see what's happened throughout the game. This information, the name and the title, is hidden. You have to tap the banner on the phone to bring that up. It works very, very smoothly. You've got the scores and the scores for each row. I was really worried that all of this information was going to be a little bit cramped or difficult to find on the mobile screen, but it's very, very slick. It's all been scaled in exactly the way I would expect it to be scaled. It doesn't feel cramped. You can find all of the information you need to find very, very quickly and very, very easily. The word for it is polished. It's just really well polished, really nicely polished already for release, which for a mobile release is exactly the kind of experience you want. So broadly speaking, I am looking forward to Gwent on mobile. I like the idea of being able to move Gwent away from the confines of my two computer monitors. Gwent for me has been locked into this space for the last 3 years. Now I get to go and play it in bed. I can play it while I'm eating breakfast, eating lunch. I take a lot of long train journeys, which I can now look forward to playing Gwent on as long as my internet connection holds up. Mobile release for a CCG is a very necessary thing to keep the game going, to keep it relevant. It's very, very popular in a casual market, let's say. I think this is a huge step for the game, and CD Projekt Red have handled it very, very nicely. The game is very slick. It works very well. It's not all perfect, of course. Nothing is. There have been a couple of random crashes, sometimes particularly with apps. This does just happen. I'm not too bothered by it personally, particularly because it never happened while I was in a game. It never happened while I was in a match. It was always on startup. I started the app, something went wrong, it closed itself again, and more importantly after that, when I made sure everything had been shut down properly, I opened it back up and it worked. It recovered whatever had gone wrong before. So I'm not really bothered by that kind of crash. It's if it happens in the middle of a game that it starts being problematic, particularly if you're playing in a tournament or in a competitive ranked match or whatever. There was one quite problematic thing, I thought, and I know that there are a number of people, a number of Gwent partners who have already reported this to CD Projekt Red. In the version that I was testing, which was a pre-release version, so it may already be fixed, when a unit was removed from the board, the total score here wasn't updated until you next played a card. So if you saw that you had, for example, 10 points and a unit worth 5 points was removed, it may still say 10 points. until you add something back that has 2 power, and then it would update to say 7. I think I got that maths right. So right now, at least for the version that I have, you need to do a little bit of mental arithmetic to make sure that you don't make any misplays. But this is, I'm reasonably confident that CD Projekt Red can get that sorted relatively quickly now that they have been made aware of the problem. So if you haven't played Gwent before, this is what it looks like. And as I said, it looks like this if you're playing it on the PC, on Xbox One or PS4, iOS, and I would imagine Android as well when that's released. It would make very little sense for it not to. It is a collectible card game. It's in the same category of games as things like Hearthstone, Magic the Gathering, but it plays very differently to them. Uniquely, Gwent doesn't use a mana system. Usually a card costs a certain amount of mana, and if you don't have the mana, you can't play the card. In Gwent, you can play any card that is in your hand on any turn, and it's up to you to decide which one. It's also a game that's played over the course of 3 rounds. You see this button here that says pass. On a turn, if I don't want to play a card, if I don't want to use an ability, I just choose to pass, and the other player gets to keep playing until they also choose to pass. When both players have passed, a new round starts. It's played over 3 rounds. You have to win 2 of them in order to win the game. That does mean there's an element of having to decide when to lose in order to gain an advantage later on in the game. It makes it very strategic, very tactical. If you know Gwent, then you know already CD Projekt Red have worked really, really hard over a few different iterations of this game now to make it a very unique and very enjoyable experience. And I think the community that already exists around the game would agree that this game is a lot of fun. It plays very differently to other games in its category. It does make you think strategically. It does make you have to slow down in order to play well. You have to slow down, you have to really engage to think which of the cards in my hand is best to use in this exact moment, in this exact scenario. And like any good strategy game, it's very easy to learn. If you've watched more of this video, you already know what the basic principle is. You take a card, you play it, right? I'll show you an example if I can find a good card to play. You take a card, in this case it wasn't a great card, but that's beside the point. You take a card, you put it on the board, you end your turn, and the opponent goes on to do the exact same thing. The game goes on in that manner until someone passes, and you win or you lose. Like, I'm just going to say, okay, I've had enough of this round, game over. That wasn't, don't do that, by the way. If you're watching this video to learn how to play, don't, because I'm just showing you the basic principles. That's it. That's how you play Gwent, and of course, learning what cards do what, when to play them, what makes sense under which scenario. It's all part of that easy to learn, difficult to master paradigm that this kind of game tends to use. Now, with free-to-play games on the mobile platform, the question, of course, is always, what's the in-game purchase catch? What's the pay-to-win catch? Gwent has always been one of the most generous card games available. That's why it had such a massive influx of players when it came into open beta. There are a lot of ways to find in-game currency that you can build a collection with. It's not just winning games, there are reward trees that you can open up, there are so many things, quests. Sending a GG to your opponent will get you a small reward. The simple fact of the matter is that just playing Gwent is enough for you to build a reasonable size collection relatively quickly. I think you will be able to find some reasonable decks, what people would consider to be meta decks, the ones that you find on the competitive ladder, the ones that people say do well, you would be able to find one of them reasonably quickly. You would definitely be able to find a deck that you can just have fun with reasonably quickly. And of course the game does come with a load of different starter decks. I think it's one for each faction except Syndicate, because that was an expansion and was meant to be a little more technically difficult, not necessarily for new players. But the 5 main factions for Gwent, they have their own starter decks, and the teams, not just Team Aretusa, Team Leviathan Gaming, I think Team Rankstar as well, have guides on how you can get budget decks and improve the starter decks to give you ideas on what you might want to craft next. There are so many resources out there from a great community, honestly. Yeah, it's a very free to play friendly game. On the other side of the coin, no pun intended, you can see the actual, currency price on my screen. I don't really have a lot to say about it other than it's very competitive in the current market. These prices make a ton of sense. It's not like they are undervaluing the card kegs or overvaluing them, overinflating them. They're just sensible prices. And it's not just cards that you can get with in-game currency or your actual hard-earned cash either. You can get what the game calls ornaments. They're the vanity items, other icons that you can use for your avatar in game, skins for the leader that you choose to lead your Gwent themed army, as it were, such as this one for Northern Realms, which is one of the in-game factions. Again, if you want to know more about the lore and the universe and things like that, there are tons of resources already out there. I won't go into too much detail here. Game boards you can find as well. Some of the ones I already have, you can get for meteorite powder, which is one of the in-game currencies. Some of them you can get for actual money, and they're all reasonably priced. It depends on how long they've been available, as these things do, but I wouldn't say any of them are overvalued or inflated prices. That's it for this video. I hope it has given you an idea of whether or not you'd like to try Gwent on iOS out. A lot of this would carry over to an Android video as well, so I don't know why I'm differentiating between the two. If you're a Gwent player already on PC or console, I would very highly recommend getting it on an iOS device if you have one, if it supports it. I've said it before, CD Projekt Red can be very confident in Gwent if we just show them that we care. You can read my recent articles on that if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'll put a link in the description for you just in case. If you haven't played Gwent, it's not up to me to say whether or not you personally would enjoy it. I love the game to bits, I always have. There will always be a part of me that will. It's not for everyone. The game, like the universe it's set in, does lean on some pretty adult themes sometimes, which if you've played The Witcher or read the Witcher books, you'll probably immediately recognize. It's free, right? It definitely doesn't force you to pay any money for it. There is enough for you to be able to try at the beginning, through the tutorials, through the decks that they give you, to be able to decide whether or not the game is for you before you invest properly. My recommendation would be download it, try it out, see what you think. If you're not a Gwent player, you could become a Gwent player. It could be a really enjoyable experience. There's already a massive community behind the game who also love it to bits. We're here and we're waiting to welcome you with open arms. Group hug. Anyway, I have been Lothari. I am going to finish recording here, cut all of this together, go and have some dinner, maybe play some mobile Gwent on the side. I hope you have enjoyed the video. You can like and subscribe if you'd like, if you've enjoyed what you've seen. I'm not going to force you to though. there's not likely to be another video coming anytime soon. I am very busy at the moment. Wherever you are in the world, whether it's morning, evening or night, I have been Lothari. You have been a pleasure to talk to, as always. Good night.